Hey everybody, Mike Miller, Herald Times, Andy Graham, columnist here. A day away from a really, really big game. A lot of folks looking forward to this one, ourselves included. Number one Ohio State coming to Bloomington. First time both Ohio State and Indiana have been undefeated going into a matchup with each other, I think, since 1942.
Wow.
So it's been a long, long time.
Wow. Well, obviously it's been a series that Ohio State has dominated, and this is a great Ohio State team. They're ranked number one. They're undefeated. They're defending national champions. They have 7 starters back on each side of the ball from that national title team, and that doesn't even count Braxton Miller, who sat out last year.
Yeah.
2-time Big Ten MVP quarterback, who now they deploy at wideout. He had a run against Virginia Tech that still just dazzles me. Did a spin.
Yeah.
He but especially Cardell Jones and Ezekiel Elliott are big guys who are tough to tackle. Indiana's tackling is going to have to be especially good tomorrow. There are a lot of things that need to go right for Indiana, but a lot of things have gone right for Indiana in a 4-0 start. Indiana's turnover ratio is terrific. They're +6 there. People have kind of questioned Indiana's passing game, but Nate Sudfeld, they're throwing for 286 yards a game. He's got 7 touchdowns and only 1 pick so far this year. It's been very efficient generally. Indiana's ground game has been pretty widely noted as being effective, with the offensive line that has pretty much proven its mettle by now.
Yeah, absolutely has.
And obviously they have a real weapon at tailback again, like a lot of the best Indiana teams under Bill Mallory did. Howard's just a guy who is going to be he's going to be a load against anybody.
Yeah.
So Indiana does have some weaponry at its disposal, but this is Ohio State's favored by 3 touchdowns. They should be heavily favored. I mean, I think it's the most talented team in the country. I think it's a team that is arguably the best coached in the country. Certainly, Urban Meyer is at the very top of his profession.
Yeah.
I also think that they're going to take Indiana seriously. I mean, Indiana's 4-0. This is the Big Ten opener. It's a Big Ten road game. And Ohio State's guys know that Indiana went in there and pretty much went toe-to-toe with them for the better part of 3 quarters with a backup quarterback last year. So I don't think there's going to be any letdown on the part of Ohio State. And Indiana's going to have to play a great game to stay competitive.
Absolutely will. No doubt about that. This is, however, an Indiana program that they've made Ohio sweat over the last couple of years. You take away, I think that was the 2013 game. I think there was some snow involved up in that one in Columbus.
Yeah,
take out that one, and even still with that, I think the average margin of victory is 15 points. I mean, the one in 2012 was a little squirrely. It was a 52-49.
52-49.
And that was a game. Actually, that was a game. Urban Meyer said this week that game here in Bloomington, last time Ohio State was here in 2012, that game was a program changer for Ohio State because it just sort of showed that.
Got their attention.
It got their attention because that was a game where late in the 4th quarter, frankly, Ohio State kind of gave up. They kind of sat on their heels a little bit, thought that game was well in hand. And
well,
it
was in hand. I mean, the score is misleading, but Indiana had one of those 4th quarters, kind of like Wake Forest did last week, where they got late touchdowns, recovered an onside kick. Everything kind of snowballed there, but they had a chance. They had a chance at the end of that game with another onside kick. I mean, so I think Urban Meyer knows Kevin Wilson. They're friends. He respects him. He understands what a Kevin Wilson offense can do. Is capable of doing.
Yeah.
And so I think the Buckeyes will be ready, but I think Indiana will be ready. I mean, it was a fairly serious loss when we learned earlier this week that Darius Latham was suspended indefinitely and not going to play. He's the most athletic of Indiana's defensive front players, and is a kind of guy that's very helpful when you're facing Ohio State. So I'm not sure how that might affect Indiana even slightly. It might affect
I think it's a huge
slightly.
Loss. I think it's a huge loss.
I think it's a loss on the field, and I also think it's a loss sort of psychologically and emotionally.
It's a gut punch.
It is. I mean, he's one of their key players, and so that's a bit of that's something that they're going to have to deal with. But
automatic lights.
We're in the break room, and the lights. It's energy saving. No complaint.
Wrong with
that. But you were not hallucinating.
Yeah.
But I do think that Indiana will come up fired, and I do think that Indiana has shown that at least in the trenches, they're capable of going toe to toe with most people.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I went out to get lunch and get a haircut, and I was walking.
Spiffy, by the way.
I was walking down Kirkwood. That's the point of the story. I was walking down Kirkwood, and I think it was Jake Reed walking out of Chipotle with a couple friends, and they were saying, "Yeah, well, good luck. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you after the win." They're trying to get. I think they're confident.
That's how they have to think.
Of course, I think they're confident. I think the last few years have shown that this is a team that has the capacity to compete with some of the better teams in the country. It's just a matter of consistency and also make no mistake. There's a huge gulf in talent. Ohio State playing average or mediocre is kind of what Indiana almost aspires to be.
Yeah, I mean, if both teams play their best game, Ohio State's going to win.
Yeah,
they have more talent.
But as we've seen through these first 4 weeks, this is not an impenetrable Ohio State team right now. This is an Ohio State program that's kind of ramping up toward the postseason. They've not been their best. I mean, Cardale Jones, there are some holes there. I mean, this is a game where if Indiana can continue to be opportunistic, continue to win the turnover battle, that's going to keep them in it. I think also, you mentioned the offense earlier. It's so easy to look at the stats and see that Indiana is on top of the Big Ten in a lot of offensive categories, individually and as a team, and yet they've to this point they've still not cashed in. They've left some plays on the table, whether scores or tomorrow they can't do that. They have to win the turnover battle. They gotta they can't settle for field goals. Once they get in the red zone, they gotta score.
If they get over the 50, they gotta get more.
Absolutely, and I think that point's been a month into the season. I think they realize it too. So it's interesting both on both ends, because you look at this Ohio State team that you can sort of pick out tiny little holes that you think you might be able to exploit, and on Indiana's end too, as good as they've played at times, there's still things to clean up, and at the same time, I think there is capacity to play really, really well this week.
Well, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, if Indiana's able to control the ball a bit on the ground with Jordan Howard, that will help. If Indiana avoids turnovers and in fact wins the turnover battle, that will help. I thought Ohio State looked like they were starting to get their act together last week.
Oh, yeah.
Cardale Jones, though, has thrown some picks. If he throws a couple of picks, I mean, last year when Indiana was able to stay in that game for a while, one of the reasons was Antonio Allen had a couple of picks.
Yep.
So if that kind of thing happens, Indiana, that would help Indiana hang around. But I do think that even the way Ohio State plays in a strange way might actually help Indiana kind of go for the gusto on offense. One thing Ohio State does really well, I think, is that they take away the easy short stuff on the outside flats. Mm-hmm. They press. They just don't concede the kind of short passing that a lot of teams, including Indiana, like to do, just short outs and that kind of stuff. That will almost compel IU, I think, to throw up the seam, to throw crossing patterns, to throw post patterns, to kind of really stretch things downfield. If they could protect Nate Sudfeld well enough, he's going to try to stretch that defense vertically, in part to help open up things for the running game with Jordan Howard. He wants to keep those safeties back. So I kind of like the notion of Indiana being real aggressive and just kind of going for the gusto, go ahead and throw in some deep shots and kind of really opening up the playbook to the point of fully utilizing it.
Haven't seen that yet.
Not really. I mean, I don't think we have, and I think now's the time for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now that you're starting Big Ten play, there's no reason to be conservative now. It's you got 4 wins in the bank. You need at least 2 more, hopefully from an IU standpoint more than that. But you're going to have to, the teams that, not just Ohio State, but they have to go play Penn State on there, and then they get Rutgers at home. But after they have the break, they have 2 games, home games, that before the season began, you looked at and you thought, those are potentially winnable with Iowa and Michigan coming in. Well, look, Michigan just beat BYU 31-0, which is scary. And Iowa's played as well or better as any team in the league so far this year. So Indiana needs to have a good October. And I think one of the ways Indiana can have a good October is to just let it all hang out. Just really go for it offensively and really be innovative with the play calls and to just attack people constantly.
And that's the thing, too. I mean, when you look at this month of October, it doesn't get much more difficult. I mean, when you have Ohio State, the month is basically bookended by Ohio State, Michigan State. You go
the top 2 teams in the country.
And that's really why last week was so important. I mean, they could easily come out of this month 1-3, and I think that's where you kind of get to a point where, okay, where is morale with this team? Are they able to kind of sustain things? The good vibes, the positive momentum they've generated to this point, is that able to be sustained through what could be, what will be a more challenging month on the field.
And that's one of the most important things about tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just maintaining momentum. And if they play competitively, even if they lose, if they play competitively and show that they could play with Ohio State in some ways, that's a good thing. I mean, to me, if they win, obviously that's a epic, stunning upset that'll turn the college football world on its ear. I don't think it's impossible. And I think if they do that, then obviously we're having a different conversation next week.
Yeah.
But I think even if they just play well and play with fire and hang in there and compete, Ohio State's going to roll them at times. I mean, Ohio State's very talented.
It's really good.
Ohio State's going to, expose Indiana's young secondary sometimes. I mean, Indiana tacklers are going to bounce off big Buckeyes sometimes, and that's going to happen. But if Indiana hangs in there and plays well and plays hard and fights throughout the game, it keeps the fan base, keeps the positive feeling about the program, keeps that vibe going. That's a big deal heading into the rest of October.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be there. We will catch up afterwards. Should be a fun day. I like this IU team. I think this Ohio State team, as you said, is darn near the best in the country. I'm not sure it's really even close.
Well, it's like Nate Sudfeld said, you come to Indiana not this week. He said you come to Indiana not to just play non-conference games. You come to play the Big Ten games. You come to play the best of the best. Right now, Ohio State's the best of the best.
Sold-out crowd. Sounds like it's going to be a little bit more pro-IU than in years past.
Yeah.
We'll see how the breakdown actually is. Either way, as we said, it's going to be a really fun afternoon at Memorial Stadium. National television audience, if you're not here in the Indiana area, catch it on ABC. Afterwards, we'll check in again with another Scoop Talk. Guys, enjoy the game. Thanks.
Sure.